Welcome to this edition of the YAHOWAH blog. I am your host, Craig Winn. We had an amazing experience last night with the fellows that we do family hour with, both Kevin and with Kirk, exploring the 6th chapter of Zechariah. And we learned the identity of the 4 flying chariots that have spiritual cargo, and discovered that their mission begins at dawn during as the long rays of the sun are striking Moriah and the Mount of Olives. And this would be on Towrah, Saturday, Shabat, September 24th in year 6000 Yah, which is 2033. And the chariot that is described as red represents the Adamah Parah, the bloody red man of the earth, who is the man from Edom, who Yeshayah discloses is dressed in red, who is sacrificed to save many Israelites at this time. The black chariot is to end the lives of those Yehudim and the Israelites who are no longer salvageable. Those who, even through the horror of the time of Yaakov's troubles, stuck with their defense of either politics or religion and their defiance of Yahweh, such that they remained either anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Yahweh, anti-covenant. But whichever of those or many of those that they embraced, they will have been viewed as they came right up to the last moment and were given every opportunity to come clean, and they couldn't. And they will be exterminated. No pain. If they led others astray, there will be consequences. If they didn't, if they were just victims of religion and politics, then that would just be the end of their mortal lives. They can't live with the rest of God's people as we enter into the re-entry period of the Gan Eden, beginning on Sukkah, 15 days from this day. The white chariot heads initially to the north through Europe, and then will turn west to canvass the United States to find all Yehudim who have the capacity to receive the benefits of the sacrifice of the red heifer, the Adamah Parah. And so any Israelite who missed the Teruah harvest because they had not accepted the terms and conditions of the covenant, hadn't embraced Yahweh by name, or Dod as their Messiah and returning king, the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, so they were left behind on Teruah the evening before. But yet there is still the hope that they can be cleansed in time for Yahweh's return with Dod 10 days hence on Yom Kippurim. They're all brought to Israel. And they will be surrounding the Temple Mount. And then there will be a dappled chariot of mottled colors that will seek out the Goyim at that time, who are not overtly religious, political, conspiratorial, or militant, who are not anti-Semitic, and whose aptitude and attitude would cause them to be useful going forward in service to God's people during the millennial celebration of Sukkah. Those are the 4 chariots that have all departed, and they have now returned. And up to this point, the entirety of this message, even as we considered the identity of the two witnesses, represented by the olive trees and the branches, on either side of the menorah. That presentation was brought to us by a malak, a spiritual messenger. Now, that spiritual messenger may not have been spiritual in the sense of a being that is part of Yahweh's Shabat, command and control regime, because this particular spiritual messenger, heavenly representative, which in many cases are actually men, particularly men that have benefited from the infusion of Yahweh's Ruach. This one has a personality. This one is insistent that Zechariah try to figure this out, the message that he's giving to him. This one understands the entire picture from beginning to end. And this one even expresses considerable emotion over what is being accomplished by these four chariots and the exodus that they are providing out of Babylon for God's people, so that this is the final opportunity to come clean and to receive the benefits of the covenant going throughout the millennial Shabbat. And at this point now, the messenger of Yahweh stands aside, because the message that's going to be delivered now comes directly from Yahweh himself. And as we learned yesterday evening, as I shared the 14th episode of this program with you, what God says to Zechariah should cause every Israeli on the planet, every Yehudim, Jew on earth, to drop whatever they're doing and pay attention. This is what was said next. Then the Debar, which is the word of Yahowah, not of Hashem, not of G-D, not of Adonai, of Yahowah. That is Yahweh's name pronounced as instructed in his Torah regarding his Hayah, existence. Then the word of Yahweh came to exist with me to say, grasp hold and obtain from those associated with the exiles who were forcibly deported, those who were removed and now must be discovered and found among the Chaldee, which is mind of the world. The duration of life on the planet for me, a compound of Chaled, the continuation of the world, and Ani, mine. So all of those that were exiles from Israel, sent around the world, who are not in Jerusalem at this moment, Yahweh is saying, they're mine. I want all of them who are mine of the world brought here. And from among the Tobiah, those who are favorable and agreeable to Yahweh. So it's go out and obtain, grasp hold of, from those associated with the exiles who were removed and now must be discovered and found among those who are mine of the world, and from among the Tobiah, the favored, those agreeable to Yahweh, who are associated with Yada Yah. Yada Yah. Have you noticed the banner that's on the lower right-hand side of this YAHOWAH blog? What does it say? Is that yadayah.com? Do you know what the website's name and our address is that presents all of the 35 books that I have written by translating Yahweh's testimony from the oldest extant sources and explaining it to you? Would that be Yada Yah? Have you noticed the name that is on the books that are part of this series? Is it Yada Yahowah? All of these books behind me, they're brought to you under the name Yada Yahowah. Our primary site on YouTube is Yada Yahowah. Do you know what Yada Yahowah means? Yada is the pen name that I wrote under for the first 10 years so that I could do this work anonymously as I translated Yahweh's testimony and presented it in an amplified form, uniquely different than anything that had ever been done before. Not only in its comprehensiveness, not only the fact that it was from the oldest extant manuscripts and the Dead Sea Scrolls, not only because it was corrected from the errant diacritical markings of the rabbis, not only because every name was reincorporated into the text based upon its proper pronunciation and meaning, not only because it was the first translation ever to present the Hebrew terms and within a parenthetical that are being used to produce that translation so that you could copy and paste it into a search engine and verify and validate that it was accurate. Everything has been done under Yada Yah, and that Yada was the anonymous name that I used doing all of this work for the first, well, at least 10 years, maybe 15 years of the 24 that I have worked with Yahowah. It means to know, to accept, to be familiar with, to acknowledge, and to understand. And Yah is the familial form of Yahowah. So it means to know Yah, to understand who Yahweh is, to announce, acknowledge Yahweh's existence and his name. And so those who are gathered in that chariot, grasped by the spiritual Ruach envoys that are in the chariot, particularly the white one that follows the black one, while the red one stays in Jerusalem, canvassing the world, are under specific instructions by Yahowah to grasp hold and obtain from those associated with the exiles who were deported, those who were removed and now are being discovered and found, based upon their DNA, by the way, not based upon Judaism, but because they are Jewish. Mind of the world. So it's only those that Yahowah can claim as his own, who are agreeable to Yahowah, to Yah. He can be favored by Yahowah or pleasant in their relationship with Yahowah, which are those who are associated with Yada Yah. There's no other series of books that are written under that name. This was scribed 2,600 years ago about a person and Yada, and a series of books, some 35 of them, you can see them behind me, that were specifically named Yada Yahowah, with a website as Yada Yah, where you can read all of them for free in their entirety. And so 2,600 years ago, Yahowah announced that this would be true, that there would be a series of books and a website known as Yada Yah that his people could go to, so that they are counted among those who are good with Yah, who are Yahwehs of the world, so they could be grasped hold of and brought home at this moment. That makes the series of books under the title Yada Yah the most important in the world, and there are no other books that bear that name. Nothing anywhere close to them. And it makes Yada, therefore, the spokesperson, the voice, the herald of Yahowah. It means that what you're listening to now is sanctioned by God. The first thing that has been sanctioned by God in 2,500 years. And then you should go for yourself in that same day and come to and enter the house of Yosiah. Yosiah is those whom Yahowah has found and now supports. The Ben Saphanyah, the children that Yahowah treasures. Those Yah values that have been hidden. Who, for the benefit of the relationship, have come out of and away from Babylon, where commingling and confusion of religion and politics were mixed together. Zechariah, memorable man of God, Yah, Zechariah 6:10. The first Exodus was from Mitzrayim, where the children of Israel were subject to apartheid and genocide. They were abused and worked nearly to death. They were enslaved. Yahowah freed them from Mitzrayim. Of course, they were miserable, obnoxious brats the entire way from Mitzrayim into the Promised Land, and they didn't get any better in the Promised Land. But nonetheless, Yahowah freed them to give them a chance, one which they have squandered for the past 3,500 years. And it is God's contention that his people are still in Babylon, and he's calling them out of Babylon. And in this particular case, after collaborating on Yada Yah to lead them out of Babylon, Yahowah is taking those who have Yada Yad and bringing them back home. So that you know, there are three Babylons today, and Babylon is the place that Abraham and Sarah left before they were called and invited to form a covenant relationship with Yahowah. It's the place that they had to walk away from as the condition of the covenant before the introductions with God could even be made. Babel is known first and foremost by babbling, lots and lots of talk that is confusing and confounding. The thing that was the most distinctive about Babylon, it was the first to historically and written form integrate religion and politics. That is what they commingled together, religion and politics. And they created the religions that have later manifest themselves as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The Babylonian Talmud is the treasured tome of Judaism. It even bears the name Babylon. Islam's Quran was initially written in Babylon, as was the Hadith. And most of the Quran is bastardized stories that rabbis sold Muhammad when he ran out of material from their Babylonian Talmud that he twisted and incorporated into his Quran and claimed they came from Allah. Islam is very Babylonian, as is, of course, Judaism, which is where Rabbinic Judaism really took root, was with the Babylonian Talmud. Christianity has incorporated all things Babylonian into the religion. The Lord is Babylonian. Mary, the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God, The Madonna and Child is purely Babylonian. Easter is Babylonian. A dying and resurrecting God is Babylonian. The celebration of a God being born on December 25th is Babylonian. The resurrection of that man God around the first Sunday of nearest the vernal equinox, when the sun crosses the constellation of Taurus, the bull, is Babylonian. The Trinity is Babylonian. The cross of Tammuz is Babylonian. Yeah, it's Christianity is Babylonian. The Zakarats were the first steeples, and cathedrals, almost all of it, born and bred in Babel. Even the book that Christians use that they call their scripture is from Babel. Bible is Babel. It means with the Lord. The Lord is Satan. Babel. So when your holy book is Babel, and most of your religious customs are born and bred in Babylon, you have Islam, Judaism, and Christianity still slathered with this. Now, when Dode was as speaking to Daniel as Gabriel, God's most capable and courageous man, what he told him was that there would be an evolution of beasts, that they would all begin with the whore of Babylon, the mother of the beasts, mother of the harlots, a mother of religion and politics and the integration of religion and politics. God hates religion, and so the religiosity of Babylon is the part of Babel that God despised the most. We even found here in Zechariah in the 5th chapter that the whore of Babel, this evil woman, is being taken back to Babel. So God has never forgotten his hatred of Babel and Bible and the religions of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And that this is the very thing that Abraham and Sarah had to leave before they could even be part of the narrative of the covenant. And so from the beast of Babylon, the beast that manifest religion and politics and tormented the Jews would next be Media-Persia. And following Media-Persia, you have Alexander the Great's Macedonian Empire. And following his empire, we're told that the beast became the bloody red nature of the vicious savagery of imperial Rome. And then there was the beast that evolved out of imperial Rome to tread upon the whole world, the worst of all possible beasts, the Roman Catholic Church, Christianity. That's the migration of these, an evolution of the ultimate beast that God speaks of through his prophet and beloved son, the Messiah, David, to Daniel. So recognizing that, we have 3 candidates, all of which qualify for Babel, which God's people are being removed from. The first of those is obviously geographic Babylon. And there's still lots of Jews who are part of that region, even though they were all exiled by the Muslims either before or after 1948, where the Jewish population was decimated by 99.5%, with the exception of Arabia, where Muhammad and the first Muslims perpetrated genocide on Jews 14 centuries ago. And so you have geographic Babylon being the Islamic Middle East. Religious Babylon, of course, is the Roman Catholic Church. Political Babylon would be the nation whose politics mirror most closely Rome. Would call itself a republic. That would be the United States. That would have a Senate. That would be the United States, who would place their capital on Capitol Hill, which would be the United States, and who would be the de facto military rulers of the world, projecting their force militarily. That would be the United States. Interfering in everybody's affairs, that would be the United States. And of course, in Yeshaya 17 and 18, the prophet provides some 50 insightful indications that it's America that abandons Israel at this time, forcing Israel to give up its heartland and what's called the two-state solution. And so it is America that's not only condemned for undermining Israel, making it indefensible by thinning the nation at its midsection where 70% of its people live, but also selling copious amounts of weapons to Israel's enemies. Precisely what Donald Trump is doing today and tomorrow and the following day. So this is the Babylon and the Babylons that Yahweh is removing his people. He's doing so for the benefit of the relationship. He's doing so because there are children of Yahweh that he treasures. He is speaking of those that he has found and supports. The fact that it's taking place on the same day means that the collection of this mortal remnant of Yisrael for the benefit of the sacrifice of the red heifer, the Adamah Parah, on Towrah, September 24th of 2033. We'll have these chariots go out in the early morning. They will come back before evening. They are spiritually equipped with Ruach, representatives of Yahweh, conveyors of Yahweh's intellect and persona. Rather extraordinary disclosure, don't you think? So Yahweh is asking his spiritual charioteers to collect, receive, and grasp hold of those who have remained outside of Israel throughout the generations after the Assyrian, Babylonian, Imperial Roman, Catholic, and Islamic deportations. God has explicitly identified those who are important to him. The final exodus will include Chaldea, mind of the world, Tobiah, those who are favorable to me and agreeable to Yahweh, and those who are associated with Yada Yah. For a man who has labored every waking moment for the past 24 years to achieve this result, of course, this is sweet music. And to think that Yahweh acknowledged our collaboration through the volumes of Yada Yah, from the books to the website, from the Yahweh blog to the many social media accounts that we work every day to reach out to God's people. Our Father has shown his appreciation. But, well, I would say thank you for that. And, it's nice to be acknowledged for doing our utmost to serve him as he has requested and to be a benefit to his people. And it is in that Yahweh's nature to be appreciative and to share credit. The fact of the matter is that the primary reason that Yahweh would say that those who are being gathered and removed from Babel come out of her, it was the last call that Yahweh is making to Israel. Come out of Babel. Those who are being removed from Babel have put themselves in this place as a result of Yada Yah. And so what God is doing is directing his people's attention to Yada Yah so that there'll be more people that God can say, they're mine. They're good. They can come home. We are the Be'eth family of Yoshia, Yahweh's found, who he supports. We are Ben Saphaniah, the children Yahweh treasures. We are those who have heeded his call to come out of Babylon, which is the first condition of the covenant. What's more, we now live in service to our King, Yahweh's beloved Son, whose crown we will have the honor of making. Isn't that kind of interesting? Yahweh is saying, I've made his throne, and he's going to be able to sit on it in great honor and distinction forevermore. But covenant family gets the honor of making his crown and setting it on his head. I can assure you, when we do this, there will not be a dry eye in the. And should you wonder what Dod's throne is going to look like, take a look at the Ark of the Covenant. The only difference between the one that he's going to sit on, which is the real one, the authentic one, the one that he had in his possession 3,000 years ago, is that the actual Ark of the Covenant has the two cherubim, such that if we're dealing with something that is, I'll make this like a seat. The wings of one cherubim sit like this. So this is the front of the seat. The wings of the first one sit like this. So this one set of rings, that right wing would be an armrest, and the left wing would go to the middle to serve as a backrest for this throne, for this seat. And the second cherubim is going to be like this, with his left wing serving as the armrest on the left side, and his right wing meeting the left wing of the other cherubim right there in the middle. So what you have is these structure like this, so that you have an armrest on both sides, like you would expect on a throne, and a backrest on the throne. And that throne is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant that Dod will have anointed on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliation, when he returns with the blood of the bull. That would be the parah, the red heifer, and of the goat, it's going to be Elia, who's going to serve in that capacity. So it's a rather extraordinary throne. As for crown, I can tell you it'll be a labor of love. I'm hoping that those who have artistic style and ability, like my wife, will be able to contribute to its elegance as opposed to myself. But I can tell you it will be a labor of love. It says, then take some silver and gold and make a crown. And you should set it on the head of Yahusha. Yahusha. Yahweh delivers and saves. The son, Ben, who is Yahusadak. Right about Yahweh. The Cohen priest, who is Gadol, the greatest and most important, recognized and honored, capable and courageous, memorable man of God, memorable man of Yah, Zechariah 6:11. All right, so this crown is not going to be gaudy with all sorts of jewels. That's not Dod's style. That is not God's style. It's going to be made of silver and gold. But Dod needs a crown. He is the king and the sovereign of everywhere forevermore. We get to make it, and then we get to set it on his head. The reason I know we set it on his head is that he is Yahusha. Yahusha is Yahweh delivers and saves. Yahweh saved us through his collaboration with Dod. It was Dod's fulfillment of Pesach and Matzah leading to Bikurim that provided us with eternal life and perfection so that we could be adopted into the covenant family. Our lives were extended on Passover. Our souls were purged of their guilt by Dod taking our guilt and depositing it in Sheol on Matzah so that we could be seen as perfect and therefore empowered and enriched by God. Dod is the one through whom Yahweh did this. So Dod is Yahusha. Dod is the only person that Yahweh routinely calls, he is my son, I am his father. So when there is a son in this case, that son must be unequivocally Dod. The attribute that Yahweh ascribes to his son Dod more than any other is Sadak. It means to be right, to be vindicated and vindicating. And so the one who is right with Yahweh, who is vindicating in his collaboration with Yahweh, is again Dod, David. Now, some might be taken aback by this mention of a Cohen, a priest. But understand that in Zechariah, we have a direct acknowledgement that Dod is going to serve as the high priest, and the role of the high priest when he returns on Yom Kippurim, because he's the one that's going to anoint the Ark of the Covenant, so that the remaining remnant of Israel can be reconciled with Yahweh and enter his presence. And so Dod's going to serve as the high priest, because from God's point of view, those who were high priests are too corrupt, too religious to be of any value, and none of them will even survive to this moment. And if you might say, wait a minute, Dod's a king, he's not a priest. Well, there are references to Dod serving in this role. As a matter of fact, when Dod's throne, the Ark of the Covenant, came into Jerusalem, and it was then that Dod dressed in the full regalia of the high priest to specifically show his role in this regard, pursuant to what will be his throne and the object that he will anoint with the blood of the bull and the goat on Yom Kippurim. And so he danced and he celebrated and he sang as the Ark of the Covenant was making its way onto the Temple Mount to be put underneath the tent of the restoring testimony until the more permanent and established house of Yahweh's name could be built. And in that episode, he is dressed in the full regalia of the high priest. The last bit of identity, again, speaks only of one man, Dod. Yahweh has a number of men, including Yada, his Choter, that he refers to as Gadol. The Choter is given the Ruach of Gadol, as a matter of fact. But the man most known to be God's most important, most recognized, honored, capable, and courageous is Dod. As a matter of fact, Gabriel, which is a name that I shared with you earlier, typically just translated as transliterated as Gabriel, by Daniel's own acknowledgement, was a man, not a angel, not a spiritual entity. And Gabriel means the most competent, courageous, capable man of God. This is Dod. So it is Dod as Gabriel, the Gabor, who provided all of the prophecies pertaining to when he would enter Jerusalem to serve as the Passover lamb and then fulfill Matzah as the Messiah and to bring eternal salvation ultimately to God's people. This is a unified story where all of these pieces fit together. And we know that Zechariah is speaking of God's beloved son, Dod. Now, of course, just to reestablish this, one does not crown priests, but one does crown kings. And since we know that our king has dressed as the high priest when bringing the Ark of the Covenant into the city of Dod, and because we are aware that he will serve in this role when he returns to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, the Kipporeth, in a manner consistent with the Torah's instructions on Kippurim, This is simply further affirmation that Dod is Yosha ben Yahowah Sadak. Yahweh is vindicating and right. Yahweh therefore delivers the son who is right about Yah. Dod is the star of the show. He is the reason the audience has been delivered. He is being crowned king of everywhere and forevermore. He is the most capable and courageous man to have ever lived, the most recognizable and important, in keeping with what is said in 2 Samuel 7. It is a remarkable prophecy, specifically when you know who God is talking about. And that's our job, to share that with you. Yahweh continues in his message to Zechariah, memorable man of Yah. Say to him, thus says Yahweh, of the heavenly implements, the Sabbath, communicating, behold, now pay attention. This individual whose reputation and renown is known as Shamak, the branch, will branch out and grow in this place. He will build at that moment in time the residence and the home as the means to endure of Yahweh. Zechariah 6:12. So when we crown Yosha ben Yahowah Sadak, our king, we are to recognize that Yahweh has referred to him as the Samak branch. This is in keeping with the relative position of Dod and Yada, the greater and lesser luminaries, the king and his herald. Shamak is the main branch. Dod is the main branch of the tree of lives. He might as well be the tree of lives. The Choter is a secondary branch off of that main branch, directing you to the tree, the branch that is Dod, and being productive and fruitful in coordinating the Shabuah and the Towrah harvest based upon what Dod achieved, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. And so the term that Yahweh loves to use, probably more than any other, to define his son, Dod, is Samak branch. Just as on the fourth day of creation, pointing to the fulfillment of the Moedim, you have the greater and lesser luminaries, the sun and the moon, with the moon reflecting the sun's light. Dod returns as brilliant as the sun. It is his herald's job, Yada's job, to reflect Dod's brilliance. And so Dod is the main branch, the Shamak, his herald is the Choter, a stem off of that branch. And this is poignant because in 2 Samuel 7, one of the most important prophecies in the whole of Yahweh's testimony, the one that brought me to translating and enhance my relationship with Yahweh tremendously, is one about building houses. Who builds them, who lives in them. And Yahweh was quite clear that he doesn't want us to build houses for him. He wants to build a marvelous home for us, and particularly for his beloved son, Dod. But nonetheless, Dod wanted badly to build a home for Yahweh. And Yahweh said something very prophetic at the time, telling Dod that, no, you're not going to build this one. And what he said is that you have blood on your hands. And that is interpreted as that he was a man of war. And yes, Dod was. He defended Israel 66 times, but Yahweh could not be using that as a negative, because Yahweh had Dod's right arm and back at every moment. He fought 66 defensive battles to protect Israel. He won 66 of them because of Yahweh's support. So being a man who fought his people's battles would have been viewed very favorably by Yah. What Yahweh meant by "you have blood on your hands" is that it is Dod as the high priest that's going to anoint the Kaporeth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, with the blood of a bull and the blood of a goat, Yada and Elia, at the moment of his return on Yom Kippurim. And so it is prophetic to having the blood on his hands that reconciles the relationship between Yisrael and Yahweh at that moment. And as a reward for all that his son has achieved by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, and returning as our king, Yahweh is saying, you get to build the house this time. And that house is going to be comprised principally of light. So it is going to be a magnificent edifice. But isn't it wonderful when you consider the nature of 2 Samuel 7, that Dod gets to do the thing that he so badly wanted to do throughout his life, which is to build a marvelous home for Yahweh's name, for the covenant family. So he will build at that moment in time the residence and home and means to endure of Yahweh. Well, it is as it should be. Dod is the Shemach, the branch, and as his herald, I am a Choter stem. We have not only come full circle with an ode to the fourth day of creation with the greater and lesser luminaries serving as signs of the Mohadim that would be fulfilled, we have returned to the garden. Dod is the main branch of the tree of lives, and the tree of knowledge is the branch that I am supporting at this time. It is all about reaching out to those who wish to be part of the covenant and be grafted onto Yisrael. So no one is more symbolic of engaging and enduring with God than his beloved son, Dod, and the person most involved in causing that to happen among God's people is his herald, the Bashar, Yada. And so it will be. Dod, David, will have the honor of overseeing the constructions of Yahweh's residence on earth upon his return. The man who has been known as the Shemach branch will once again become the catalyst of our growth and haikal, empowerment, our enablements, such that we persist and endure. To the uninitiated, it might appear that Yahweh was repeating himself in this next refrain as we go forward. But there is a subtle difference between these two statements. Using the perfect conjugation with banah, building, to build initially, God is saying that his son will construct his temple, if you will, upon his return. And with the imperfect shaping the action in the second affirmation, the one we're about to consider, we know that at this time, God's home, this one, is going to endure forevermore. Our next insight comes by way of Hod, where we discover that Yahweh intends for his son's authority, majesty, and splendor, his honor and glory, to be upheld now throughout time. This is a father doing for his son as one would expect, while unexpected for God, because, well, his people don't want to grant him the pleasure of having a son, even though he exclaims that Dod is his beloved son. For the past 6,000 years, the religions of men have made portend that men must lift up their gods in praise, while God, who made man, is demonstrating the opposite. He is glorifying his son. And it is precisely what we should do, following his example. On multiple occasions, all of which are directed explicitly to Dod, Yahweh affirms that he has built a home for Dod's throne. And it is Dod David who will occupy this prestigious seat of honor forevermore. It is not up for sale or available to steal. as Christians have done. Beyond this, and while we've seen it before, it is still a bit startling to see Yahweh refer to someone from the house of Yehudah serving and adorned as a Cohen priest. But not only has Dode done so previously, if there ever was an individual suited to do it all, the ultimate Renaissance man, it is the son who became king, the shepherd serving as our Savior, the prophetic priest. This is how we will see our king upon his return. And he will build forevermore the residence to engage and endure of Yahweh. His authority and countenance, his majesty and splendor will be lifted up and upheld throughout time. And he will sit and remain upon his throne. Then he will govern through his proverbs, his mashal. Additionally, he will be dressed as a priest upon his seat of honor. Advice and counsel and the complete picture, etzah, on peace and prosperity, satisfaction and contentment, the blessings of reconciliation and freedom, shalom, will exist to encourage understanding by making the connections between both of these responsibilities. Zechariah, memorable man of Yah, and remember Yah, Zechariah 6:13. Well, that was also pretty extraordinary, was it not? So this next house for Yahweh's name, this residence for the covenant family, is Wahbana, represented in the called imperfect, a literal interpretation, but without end. And so he will build forevermore the residence to engage and endure. Eth, I call the sanctuary, the place of the temple, to prevail and to persist. It is from Yakal, which is the means to overcome, to succeed and persevere, to be empowered and be made capable by Yahweh. His authority and consonance, his majesty and splendor will be lifted up and upheld throughout time. We were told specifically of Dode that he will be given a name and a level of distinction that surpass all others who have ever lived. God is affirming that through the second to last prophet, Zechariah. And he will sit upon his throne. We find throughout the Mizmor, and particularly in the 89th, and we find in 2 Samuel 7 that Dode is being afforded an everlasting throne, a seat of honor by Yahweh that is built by Yahweh and will be housed in a lovely home constructed and designed by Yahweh for his beloved son, who is Dode David. And just beyond all of that, we know that it is Dode who is the person that Yahweh picked to be the king of not only Israel, but the king of forevermore. And it says that he will govern through his proverbs, mashal. I came to the conclusion very early on that it was obvious that Dode had written the mashal, the proverbs, and this is clearly so. And it is the way that Dode's going to govern. He's going to lead through expressing brilliant sayings and intelligent comparisons, pithy quotes. He's going to draw pictures with words to exercise his authority. His leadership will be by explaining things in a memorable way to encourage understanding. Isn't that a beautiful picture of the ideal leader? Somebody you'd want to sit next to and learn from. Someone you'd feel very comfortable supporting. So he is the king of the mashal, which he wrote. Additionally, he will be dressed as a priest upon his seat of honor. Well, there you have it. It's the king wearing his crown that is majestic, that wrote the mashal, who will be dressed as the priest. It's Dod. This next word, etzah, is one that was spoken of through Yashayah and again through Dod between 300 and 600 years before Zechariah was written. And it speaks of the spirit of etzah that was afforded to the Choter. And when Dod describes the Choter in the 14th Mashal, speaking of Mashal, he speaks of him having etzah. Chip off the old block, I guess, here. Branch off the main stem, or a stem off the main branch would be more correct. Just as Dod and I share Chakmah, according to Dod, according to Yashayah, and that we share Yada, knowledge, and we share Gabora, courage and competency. We share Yara, respect and reverence for Yahowah. We share Bien, which is the capability of making connections to understand, and the Chakmah is wisdom, which we also share. These are things that are conveyed by Dod of the Choter and things that Yashayah says of the Choter that come by way of Yahweh's Ruach. And of course, we share Yahweh's name. But we also share Etzah. Etzah is one of the 7 spirits of Yahowah that is given to the Choter. It is an interesting term because it reveals that Dod and Yada, the branch and the stem, are the 2 individuals who have etzah, been able to provide counsel on the complete picture, telling you how the story all plays out from beginning to end, from life in the garden with Yahowah to our return to the garden following Sukkah in year 6000 Yah. It is a complete picture, one which Dod, as the Son of God and the exemplar of the covenant, the one who executed the means for us to be part of the covenant, sits right in the middle in year 3000 Yah. And it is this complete picture. The difference between Dod and myself as it relates to etzah is that Dod was in a much more difficult position to figure out the entire story because he lived in the middle of the story. And now I'm sharing this to you from the end of the story, so it's much easier to see the whole portrait that God has painted for us in its completeness. So etzah is pertinent directions regarding how to properly respond to the entire plan, prudent consultation on the purpose of the whole proposal, effective mentoring on how to deliberate all relevant decisions. On peace and prosperity, shalom, satisfaction and contentment, shalom, blessings of reconciliation and freedom. That is the story. The whole story revolves around that word, shalom. It's the most repeated word amongst Jews. It means to reconcile a relationship. Peace is a derivative of that concept of reconciling a relationship. It is Dod who reconciles our relationship with Yahowah on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations. And it's his herald, Yada, who makes that possible for the mortal remnant of Yisrael as the Adamah Parah. We are the 2 men who offer sacrifices as part of the Moedim, the serving as the greater and lesser luminaries. So this is the complete picture on reconciliation, shalom, that will exist to encourage understanding and making the connections between both of these responsibilities. Bien, Shanaim, which means both. Bien is the most, interesting word probably in the Hebrew language. It can mean simply between, drawing a connection between this and that, today and tomorrow, sunrise and sunset, between these things. But it is also the Hebrew word for understanding, for complete comprehension. And so, since it's the same word, what it's doing is saying that it is by making connections between the various things we have come to know and finding the common denominator, using statistical analysis to ascertain the connections between these various things and how one thing leads to another. They have an appreciation of cause and consequence, for example. Making the connections here between Dode and the Shemek branch, between the crown, between the seat of honor, between him being Gadol, Chakmah, Bien, all of these things, him being the one who is Sadak, the one who Yahweh saves through Yahusha. It's by making these connections that we come to understand. And this is the process that is being implemented here in Zechariah 6:13. So just as building homes and thrones connects to Shamuel 7 and Zechariah 6, and as Chakmah wisdom leading to Bien understanding serves as the bridge between Proverbs 14 and Isaiah 11, where the Choter is named and described, here we find two more. It was in his 14th Mashal word picture that Dode explained his association with the Choter, and it is in the parallel portrait painted by Yashaya 300 years later that we find that they shared Etzah and Gabora. Etzah is a very unique term, and Gabor is as well competent, courageous, compassionate men who were able to put the whole picture together so that we could respond appropriately as a result of using Chakmah, intelligence, to begin understand through word pictures, painting them, reading them, perceiving them, observing them, sharing them. So God's Son will, Mashal, govern through his proverbs, and a giant stride in that direction existed when he introduced the Choter in Mashal 14. And if you recall, it was after addressing the spirits of Chakmah and Bien that Yahweh spoke of providing the Choter with the Ruach of Etzah and then of Gaborath, one after another. Therefore, to reflect the ultimate Gabor, courageous and competent man's light, the Choter must be able to adroitly convey his Etzah, advice and counsel on the whole story, so that God's people can respond appropriately. And therefore, Yahweh inspired Yashaya to affirm the productive stem would receive the spirit of advice and counsel on the complete picture, Etzah, and of being emboldened, capable, and inspiring, while Gabora, on how to be confident and courageous as a leader, to be empowering. That's from Yashaya 11. Like the Shemach, like Choter, like branch, like stem. And as we have just read, both would be afforded uncommon bien, which is bena in this derivative, which is to make the connections to understand. Therefore, Yashaya explained that the Choter would also receive the Spirit, providing the capacity to comprehend and then teach Chakmah, while enabling understanding by making the proper connections to reveal insights, bena. God is making it as clear as possible, as he did right back in the creation account with the fourth day of creation, when he said there would be a greater and lesser luminary associated with the Moedim, the two men who would offer their Bashar bodies to fulfill the Moedim, Dode on Pesach, me on Teruah, and Dode being the sun and the moon representing my role of reflecting the sun's light. But all the way through in this story, we are brothers. We are brothers of a different mother, but we are brothers, or maybe brothers of the same mother, but we indeed reflect one another. We are exceedingly similar. And we will work together because we share similar attitudes and attributes. It should be a marvelous collaboration. God chose Dode over all humans who have ever lived. Dode is Yahweh's favorite person because of his attitude, because of his attributes, because of his courage, his strength, his intellect, his wisdom. And the compassion to serve as the Pisach and the one who would fulfill matzah by taking our guilt into Sheol. There is no better man from Yahweh's perspective than Dode. And Yahweh has done his best to find a Bashar, a herald for his beloved son, our King Dode, who reflects as many of his beloved son's attributes as is possible. And while at different times and in distinct ways, they would both be purveyors of shalom, reconciliation, which is true. Dode through Pesach and Matzah, and Yada through the fulfillment of the two harvests, followed by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on Towrah. Dode offered his during Chakmah, Yada, of course, here on Yom Teruah. Yahweh is such a great dad. More than anything, his son wanted to build a home for his father, and he had acquired Mount Moriah, including the threshing floor of what was now known as the Temple Mount, and he had stockpiled all the materials. Yahweh even provided his son with a diorama of exactly how it would look and how it would be built, that he then conveyed to Solomon, whose name was based upon Shalom. The king longed to build God's home, and he participated in a very impassioned exchange with Yahweh through the gift Nathan. And God presented very dramatically in 2 Samuel 7 the basis of what he is explaining now. I think 2 Samuel 7 is as marvelous, insightful, uplifting, educational, enlightening as any prophecy in the entirety of the Torah. Speaking of Dode, not only as God's son, but of the returning king of Yisrael. And it is a prophetic portrayal of a father's love for his son that served as the impetus to attract the Choter, productive sucker, and inspire everything which has followed. So over the ensuing 24 years, we've come to behold and lift up the Hod, the continence and authority of Dode, as the Mashiach and Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb. We have witnessed his special place with Yah, coming to appreciate the honor and glory the Father is affording to his beloved Son, based upon all he has said and done in his lives and lyrics, particularly coming to this grand crescendo and the ultimate cornerstone of God's home, which is the 89th Mizmor, the song that Yahweh wrote on behalf of Dode. The first prophecy translated for Yada Yahowah? Yes, indeed. 2 Samuel 7, he listens to God. It still guides our footsteps all along the way. Yes, I will never forget that moment. I was pacing in the log cabin that I had built along a picturesque white water stream. It's called the Jumping Branch, branch of all names, of course, meandering through the woods within my Virginia farm. I had just returned from surviving a meeting with Islamic jihadists in Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and Al-Qaeda. And I was attempting to share that experience in Tea with Terrorists. It was as if a limb from one of those towering red and white oaks, which is, by the way, Allah in Hebrew, had hit me square in the head as the wind stirred outside that cabin on this cool spring day. No matter which Bible I queried, every translation of 2 Samuel 7 was wrong. And it was then and there that my quest to know the truth, to understand what God actually revealed, began. 24 years have passed now, and you're listening to the result. Yada Yah. I have translated Shamuel, he listens to God, 2 Samuel 7, either 8 or 9 times. I'm excited to read about its fulfillment here in Zechariah, his presentation of the events surrounding Yom Kippurim here in Zechariah 6. I'm happy for Yahowah and thrilled for his son, even personally, find it fulfilling to be sharing this portrait of their reunion. It is as if I'm witnessing the birth of Yada and the conception of Yada Yah from the vantage point of where it has all led to Dowd building Yahweh's home and then reigning as king. So yes, Yahweh's promises to his son will be honored. The prestige of Shemach, the branch, will grow. His purpose will be upheld, and that is just the beginning. The author of the Mashal Proverbs will govern through them, sharing their parental advice. Dowd will continue to lead through his lyrics. Going to be a great king. His ongoing narratives will serve to explain the things of God and the universe in such a way that we'll be able to make the kind of comparisons that lead to understanding that will guide our steps as we travel to galaxies far, far away. It is as we would expect of Yahowah, our Father, dressing his son in white linen and the garments he designed for the priests, the very attire he considered in Zechariah 3. This is why that story was presented immediately before the revelation of the 2 witnesses aside the menorah, and why it leads to the revelations that we have unraveled here in Zechariah 4, 5, and now 6. So Yahowah has upended the religious interpretations, and he has denied the use of Dowd's identity and the creation of religious gods. Clearly, it is Dowd whom Yahowah has chosen to perform, as his Torah instructs when approaching the Kipporth, this mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant on Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, on behalf of all Yisrael, the remaining remnant who is brought in by Yahowah at this time and who benefits from the sacrifice of Dowd's herald, the Adamah Parah, the red heifer. Now that is why this is announcing all of this to us. This is why we find the Messiah King dressed as a priest, as a Cohen, upon his seat of honor, Al Kiseh Hu. And now, if I may share one additional profound insight as part of this program. The reason that Dowd told us that he would not initially allow Dowd to build the home of Yahowah 3,000 years ago is, as I have shared with you, but I want to share the exact statement so that you have it directly from Yahowah and not paraphrased through me. It comes from 1 Chronicles, words of the day, 22, 8 and 9. It begins the same way as this last passage. The word of Yahowah came to me, saying, a great amount of blood you have poured out as you have fought many great battles. So you will not build this house for my name because of the abundance of the blood that you have shed in the land in my presence. Behold, a son shall be born to you who shall be the man of repose and relative ease, for Solomon, Shalomo, shall be his name. Shalom, in a more favorable circumstance, I will give to Yisrael this day. So with blood on his hands as a result of defending Yisrael from Sair, Chata'ah and Pasha, let's make a thoughtful connection to what will occur on Yom Kippurim. Remember what we were told that the alternative or stand-in Aaron would do to facilitate reconciliation? Well, I want to bring the whole thing together for you so that you can make the connections to understand. Aaron, which means the alternative, should approach with the bull, Hapar. You've heard of this fellow named as the Adamah Parah? Same fellow. For being wrong and for having missed the way, Wachata'ah. Yes, the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on behalf of the adulterous woman that is the mortal remnant of Israel, because by being religious, she has incurred guilt, having missed the way and misled many. For his benefit and for the purpose of reconciliation, Wah Kafar, the very basis of the day of Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, making atonement for this, for himself and for the house and for the family, for the house and for the family of God. And he should take from the life of this bull, this par, the stand-in for the Adamah Parah, the bloody red man of the earth who is protective, serving as the red heifer, as the restitution for having been wrong, for his benefit. And he should obtain some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the face of the Kapporah, the mercy seat, on the eastern side, then toward the front of the mercy seat. He should sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Isn't it interesting how this is playing out? And how God wants us to have an appreciation of what is being done on this day by his Son. Next, he should prepare the goat, that's Elia, to provide the means to resolve iniquity and pardon sin for going astray, for the benefit of the people, and return with its blood towards the house and through the curtain with its blood, as he did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it upon the mercy seat, the Kapporah, toward the front of the mercy seat. Thereby, he shall provide reconciliation upon the set-apart place as a result of the impurity and filthiness of the children of Israel. They are the adulterous woman of Numbers 5, who must be cleansed by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, the red heifer, so that Israel is ready to be betrothed and royal to her returning king, Daud. So the filthiness will be cured of the children of Israel as a result of their religious rebellion and political defiance, Pasham. It will be resolved along with the realization that they have been totally wrong and have wandered away. Therefore, he should act accordingly, doing this to approach the shining and clear tent of the restoring witness to the eternal testimony of the appointed meetings, the Moed, which abides with them in the midst of their impurity and filthiness. Kara called out Leviticus 6:16. So Aaron would be symbolic of what Yahweh will have Daud to do for his people on this day. He will act in accordance with the Torah to reconcile the relationship with Yisrael and Yehudah via the Kapporah on Kippurim, leading to Sukkah. And now we know why the blood would be sprinkled on the mercy seat, why it would come from a par, Yada, as the Adamah Parah, the king's herald, the Choter, and the Seir, the goat representing Elia, and not occurring by way of the Passover AL, why this would occur on Kippurim, not Pesach. So before we move on and we conclude this program, let's consider the prophet's concluding analysis of Dod's role in our lives. He said, advice and counsel upon the complete picture while providing effective mentoring on how to deliberate all relevant decisions on peace and prosperity, satisfaction and contentment, the blessings of reconciliation and freedom will exist to encourage understanding by making the connections between both of these responsibilities. And that, my friends, is Shamuel 2 Samuel. That is Zechariah 6:13. And it's speaking of what was conveyed earlier in 2 Samuel 7, where we read, it came to pass when the king sat down and relaxed in his home, that I'm going to tell you this story on another episode of the YAHOWAH blog, because this is now the beginning of 2 Samuel 7:2, which is one of my very favorite. And let's begin our next session of Chakmah Choter with it. So I thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to presenting the ongoing story of Dod's role in our salvation in time for Yisrael to capitalize and come home to their God. May Yahweh bless you all.